Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of reading of Sophie's World by Jostein Gaarder to the Prajna channel. Today, we are going to read about Spinoza, and we are joined in the panel by S.K. Garu. Garu, welcome to the panel.
Hello, Andy.
So, I think we are audible, and we are, yes,
Okay.
uh,
Shall we get started, sir?
yes, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. I'm ready.
okay. I'm taking Sophie,
Yeah,
as usual. Okay. Yeah. So, Spinoza. God is not a puppeteer. They sat silently for a long time. Then Sophie spoke, trying to get Alberto's mind off what had happened. Descartes must have been an odd kind of person. Did he become famous?
Alberto breathed
Alberto,
deeply. Yeah,
hmm. Alberto breathed deeply for a couple of seconds before answering.
he had a great deal of significance, perhaps most of all for another great philosopher, Baruch Spinoza, who lived from 1632 to 1677.
Are you going to tell me about him?
That was my intention, and we're not going to be stopped by military provocations.
I'm all ears.
All right. Spinoza belonged to the Jewish community of Amsterdam, but he was excommunicated for heresy. Few philosophers in more recent times have been so blasphemed and so persecuted for their ideas as this man. It happened because he criticized the established religion. He believed that Christianity and Judaism were only kept alive by rigid dogma and outer ritual. He was the first to apply what we call a historico critical interpretation of the Bible.
Explanation, please.
Sure. He denied that the Bible was inspired by God down to the last letter. When we read the Bible, he said, we must continually bear in mind the period it was written in. A critical reading, such as the one he proposed, revealed a number of inconsistencies in the texts. But beneath the surface of the scriptures in the New Testament is Jesus, who could well be called God's mouthpiece. The teachings of Jesus, therefore, represented a liberation from the orthodoxy of Judaism. Jesus preached a religion of reason, which valued love higher than all else. Spinoza interpreted this as meaning both love of God and love of humanity. Nevertheless, Christianity had also become set in its own rigid dogmas and outer rituals.
I don't suppose these ideas were easy to swallow, either for the church or the synagogue.
Correct. Synagogue. Synagogue is a Jewish place of worship.
Oh.
When things got really tough, Spinoza was even deserted by his own family. They tried to disinherit him on the grounds of his heresy. Paradoxically enough, few have spoken out more powerfully in the cause of free speech and religious tolerance than Spinoza. The opposition he was met with on all sides led him to pursue a quiet and secluded life devoted entirely to philosophy. He earned a meager living by polishing lenses, some of which have come into my possession.
Very impressive.
There is almost something symbolic in the fact that he lived by polishing lenses, so that the clarity of vision, so to speak. A philosopher must help people to see life in a new perspective. One of the pillars of Spinoza's philosophy was indeed to see things from the perspective of eternity.
The perspective of eternity?
Yes, Sophie, do you think you can imagine your own life in a cosmic context? You'll have to try and imagine yourself and your life here and now.
That's not so easy.
Remind yourself that you're only living a minuscule part of all nature's life. You are part of an enormous whole.
I think I see what you mean.
Can you manage to feel it as well? Can you perceive all of nature at one time, the whole universe, in fact, at a single glance?
I doubt it. Maybe I need some lenses.
I don't mean only the infinity of space, I mean the eternity of time as well. Once upon a time, 30,000 years ago, There lived a little boy in the Rhine Valley. He was a tiny part of nature, a tiny ripple on an endless sea. You too, Sophie, you too are living a tiny part of nature's life. There's no difference between you and that boy.
Except that I'm alive now.
Yes, but that is precisely what I wanted you to try and imagine. Who will you be in 30,000 years?
Was that the heresy?
Heresy. Heresy.
Heresy.
Heresy means heretical. Heretical means going, talking ideas against the scripture. Yeah,
Oh,
Vamsigar, welcome to the panel, sir.
Morning and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So was that the heresy you asked? Not entirely. Spinoza didn't only say that everything is nature. He identified nature with God. He said God is all and all is in God.
so he was a pantheist.
That's true. To Spinoza, God did not create the world in order to stand outside of it. No, God is the world. Sometimes Spinoza expresses it differently. He maintains that the world is in God. In this, he is quoting St. Paul's speech to the Athenians on the Areopagos, Areopagos hill. In him we live and move and have our being. But let us pursue Spinoza's own reasoning. His most important book was his Ethics Geometrically Demonstrated.
Ethics geometrically demonstrated?
It may sound a bit strange to us. In philosophy, ethics means the study of moral conduct for living a good life. That is also what we mean when we speak of the ethics of Socrates or Aristotle, for example. It is only in our own time that ethics has more or less become reduced to a set of rules for living without treading on other people's toes.
Because thinking of yourself is supposed to be egoism?
Something like that. Yes, when Spinoza uses the word ethics, he means both the art of living and the moral conduct.
But even so, the art of living demonstrated geometrically?
The geometrical method refers to the terminology he used for his formulations. You may recall how Descartes wished to use mathematical method for philosophical reflection. By this, he meant a form of philosophic reflection that was constructed from strictly logical conclusions. Spinoza was part of the same rationalistic tradition. He wanted his ethics to show that human life is subject to the universal laws of nature. We must therefore free ourselves from our feelings and our passions. Only then will we find contentment and be happy, he believed.
Surely we are not ruled exclusively by the laws of nature?
Well, Spinoza is not an easy philosopher to grasp. Let's take him bit by bit. You remember that Descartes believed that reality consisted of two completely separate substances, namely thought and extension.
How could I have forgotten it?
The word substance can be interpreted as that which something consists of, or that which something basically is, or can be reduced to. Descartes operated then with two of these substances. Everything was either thought or extension. However, Spinoza rejected this split. He believed that there was only one substance. Everything that exists can be reduced to one single reality, which is simply called substance. At times, he calls it God or nature. Thus, Spinoza does not have the dualistic view of reality that Descartes had. We say he is a monist, that is, he reduces nature and the condition of all things to one single substance.
They could hardly have disagreed more.
But the difference between Descartes and Spinoza is not as deep seated as many have often claimed. Descartes also pointed out that only God exists independently. It's only when Spinoza identifies God with nature or God and creation that he distances himself a good way from both Descartes and from the Jewish and Christian doctrines.
So then nature is God, and that's that.
But when Spinoza uses the word nature, he doesn't only mean extended nature. By substance, God, or nature, he means everything that exists, including all things spiritual.
You mean both thought and extension.
You said it. According to Spinoza, We humans recognize two of God's qualities or manifestations. Spinoza called these qualities God's attributes. And these two attributes are identical with Descartes' thought and extension. God or nature manifests itself either as thought or as an extension. It may well be that God has infinitely many more attributes than thought and extension, but these are the only two that are known to man.
Fair enough. But what a complicated way of saying it.
Yes, one almost needs a hammer and a chisel to get through Spinoza's language. The reward is that in the end, you dig out a thought as crystal clear as a diamond.
I can hardly wait.
Everything in nature, then, is either thought or extension. The various phenomena we come across in everyday life, such as a flower or a poem by Wordsworth, are different modes of the attribute of thought or extension. A mode is a particular manner which substance, God or nature assumes. A flower is a mode of the attribute of extension, and a poem about the same flower is a mode of the attribute of thought. But both are basically the expression of substance, God or nature.
You could have fooled me.
But it's not as complicated as he makes it sound. Beneath his stringent formulations lies a wonderful realization that is actually so simple that everyday language cannot accommodate it.
I think I prefer everyday language if it's all the same to you.
Right. Then I'd better begin with you yourself. When you get a pain in your stomach, what is it that has a pain?
Like you just said, it's me.
Fair enough. And when you later recollect that you once had a pain in your stomach, what is it that thinks?
That's me too.
So you are a single person that has a stomachache one minute and is in a thoughtful mood the next. Spinoza maintained that all material things and things that happen around us are an expression of God or nature. So it follows that all thoughts that we think are also God's or nature's thoughts. For everything is one. There's only one God, one nature, or one substance.
But listen, when I think something, I'm the one who's doing the thinking. When I move, I'm doing the moving. Why do you have to mix God into it?
I like your involvement, but who are you? You are Sophie Amundsen, but you're also the expression of something infinitely bigger. You can, if you wish, say that you are thinking or that you are moving, but could you not also say it is nature that is thinking your thoughts or that it is nature that is moving through you? It's really just a question of which lenses you choose to look through.
Are you saying I cannot decide for myself?
Yes and no. You may have the right to move your thumb any way you choose, but your thumb can only move according to its nature. It cannot jump off your hand and dance about the room. In the same way, you also have your place in the structure of the existence, my dear. You are Sophie, but you are also a finger of God's body,
So God decides everything I do?
or nature, or the laws of nature. Spinoza believed that God or the laws of nature is the inner cause of everything that happens. He is not an outer cause, since God speaks through the laws of nature and only through them.
I'm not sure I can see the difference.
God is not a puppeteer who pulls all the strings, controlling everything that happens. A real puppet master controls the puppets from the outside and is therefore the outer cause of the puppet's movements. But that is not the way God controls the world. God controls the world through natural laws. So God or nature is the inner cause of everything that happens. This means that everything in the material world happens through necessity. Spinoza had a deterministic view of the material or natural world.
I think you said something like that before.
You're probably thinking of the Stoics. They also claim that everything happens out of necessity. That that was why it was important to meet every situation with stoicism. Man should not get carried away by his feelings. Briefly, that was also Spinoza's ethics.
I see what you mean, but I still don't like the idea that I don't decide for myself.
Okay, let's go back in time to the Stone Age boy who lived 30,000 years ago. When he grew up, he cast spears after wild animals, loved a woman who became the mother of his children, and quite certainly worshipped the tribal gods. Do you really think he decided all that for himself?
I don't know.
Or think of a lion in Africa. Do you think it makes up its mind to be a beast of prey? Is that why it attacks a limping antelope? Could it instead have made up its mind to be a vegetarian?
No, a lion obeys its nature.
You mean the laws of nature? So do you, Sophie, because you are also part of nature. You could, of course, protest with the support of Descartes that a lion is an animal and not a free human being with free mental faculties. But think of a newborn baby that screams and yells. If it doesn't get milk, it sucks its thumb. Does the baby have a free will?
I guess not.
When does the child get its free will then? At the age of 2, she turns around and points at everything in sight. At the age of 3, she nags her mother. At the age of 4, she suddenly gets afraid of the dark. Where is the freedom, Sophie?
I don't know.
When she's 15, she sits in front of a mirror experimenting with makeup. Is this the moment when she makes her own personal decisions and does what she likes?
I see what you're getting at.
She is Sophie Amundsen, certainly, but she also lives according to the laws of nature. The point is that she doesn't realize it because there are so many complex reasons for everything she does.
I don't think I want to hear anymore.
But you must just answer a last question. Two equally old trees are growing in a large garden. One of the trees grows in a sunny spot and has plenty of good soil and water. The other tree grows in poor soil in a dark spot. Which of the trees do you think is bigger? And which of them bears more fruit?
Obviously, the tree with the best conditions for growing.
According to Spinoza, this tree is free. It has its full freedom to develop its inherent abilities. But if it is an apple tree, it will not have the ability to bear pears or plums. The same applies to us humans. We can be hindered in our development and our personal growth by political conditions, for instance. Outer circumstances can constrain us. Only when we are free to develop our innate abilities can we live as free beings. But we are just as much determined by inner potential and outer opportunities as the Stone Age boy in the Rhine, the lion in Africa, or the apple tree in the garden.
Okay, I give in almost.
Spinoza emphasizes that there is only one being which is totally and utterly its own cause and can act with complete freedom. Only God or nature is the expression of such a free and non accidental process. Man can strive for freedom in order to live without outer constraint, but he will never achieve free will. We do not control everything that happens in our body, which is a mode of the attribute of extension. Neither do we choose our thinking. Man, therefore, does not have a free soul. It is more or less imprisoned in a mechanical body.
That is rather hard to understand.
Spinoza said that it was our passions, such as ambition and lust, which prevent us from achieving true happiness and harmony. But that if we recognize that everything happens from necessity, we can achieve an intuitive understanding of the nature as a whole. We can come to realize with crystal clarity that everything is related, even that everything is one. Even that everything is one. The goal is to comprehend everything that exists in an all embracing perception. Only then will we achieve true happiness and contentment. This was what Spinoza called seeing everything subspecies eternitatis. Eternitatis.
Which means what?
To see everything from the perspective of eternity. Wasn't that where we started?
It will have to be where we end too. I must get going.
Alberto stood up
Alberto
and
got
fetched
up.
yeah, go ahead.
Alberto got up and fetched a large fruit dish from the bookshelves. He set it on the coffee table.
Won't you at least have a piece of fruit before you go?
Sophie helped herself to a banana. Alberto took a green apple. She broke off the top of the banana and began to peel it. There is something written here, she said suddenly.
Where?
Here, inside the banana peel. It looks as if it was written with an ink brush. Sophie leaned over and showed Alberto the banana. He read aloud.
Here I am again, Hilda. I'm everywhere. Happy birthday.
Very funny, said Sophie.
He gets more crafty all the time. But it's impossible, isn't it? Do you know if they grow bananas in Lebanon? That's yours. Anyway,
Uh,
Alberto shook his head. I'm certainly not going to eat that. That's what Sophie said. Leave it then. Someone who writes birthday greetings to his daughter on the inside of an unpeeled banana must be mentally disturbed, but he must also be quite ingenious.
yes, both.
So, shall we establish here and now that Hilda has an ingenious father? In other words, he's not so stupid.
That's what I've been telling you. And it could just as well be him that made you call me Hilda last time I came here. Maybe he is the one putting all the words in our mouths.
Nothing can be ruled out. We shouldn't doubt. We should doubt everything.
For all we know, our entire life could be a dream.
But let's not jump to conclusions. There could be a simpler explanation.
Well, whatever. I have to hurry home. My mom is waiting for me. A- Alberto saw her to the door and she left and he said,
We'll meet again, dear Hilda.
then the door closed behind her.
So
Okay.
anyway, so
Spinoza.
this whole Spinoza thing is like it is getting closer to that one, you know. It's how do I put it? It's like there is the extension and the thought, but then he said it's all one basically.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Shiksha
Could
Dhingar,
you give us this
welcome to the panel.
comparative summary, sir, between
Hello, sir.
Spinoza and Descartes?
So Descartes is saying there are two different distinct things. Spinoza is saying it's just one. It's just an expression of two different expressions of the same thing. Thought versus the natural extension or the emotion, basically. Right. So that's what he was talking about, right? When you are in pain, you are in pain. That's an extension. But then when you think about the pain 2 days later, it's a thought. Right? I think Lawyer Garu also joined. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
So the thought and the extension are the same thing as
Hello.
Spinoza's extension. Hello, sir.
Mm.
So let's do Locke as well.
One other question. So in that
Yeah.
two apple trees analogy, right? That example. So apples can only give apple is the law of nature.
Constraint. Yeah.
But one healthy environment, one not so supportive for growing. Kada? So
Yes.
is that what he said? It's a free will of the apple tree to not grow?
It's not. Right?
Even that's the law of nature.
Correct. So you may think you have free will, but you are bounded by certain constraints of nature, basically. Right? No, you make choices, but the choices are limited to certain things that are bigger, you know, and the external reasons.
Okay.
I think last week we talked about the framing part, right? Everything, every object, every living and non-living is boxed in a frame. So it has to do its, role or duties by the frame, in the frame.
Right. So it's also difficult to understand the Western philosophy because these are all ideas, right? And then there's a lot of discussion about why this is correct, why that is correct, you know. But you will see that there's a lot of emphasis on the rationality or the thought as opposed to something a little more experiential, basically.
Also, what's the timeline difference, sir, between Spinoza and Descartes?
I don't know, maybe 50 years, let's say. So Descartes, Spinoza is what, 16?
1697.
Give me 1 second. So Descartes died in 1650, right?
1632 is Spinoza. Date of year of birth.
So there is some overlap between these two guys.
Okay.
So they must have, at least seen each other's thoughts or ideas. And I'm also trying to find which page number.
And look at the pace of philosophical thoughts. getting
So,
updated slash changed.
correct. So every sort of era has its ups and downs, right? So
Right.
you'll also find that for a long time the same ideas continue, and then suddenly somebody comes up with a new idea. Right? So Descartes died in 50. This guy was there till 77 or something, 1600s.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's important to remember is that this guy Spinoza was also persecuted and things like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, because he was heretical and he said something like nature is God kind of thing, whereas in your Abrahamic tradition, God makes the nature. He's never part of it. So there is God and there is nature, and they're two separate things.
Hmm.
Yeah, very creationist sort of approach. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's only so much we can discuss per se, because again, some of these ideas still persist, and some of them people don't agree to them anymore, basically, in this day and age. Because now it has all gone into the science overlap of, so the philosophy is going in the direction of this whole personal experience, right? Personal experience, nowadays, they put monitors on your brain and then they are talking about neuroscience and all that, right? So, given that there is a new overlap between science and philosophy, because you don't need to make there's no assumption, but they're trying to measure more measurements, basically, you know. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Next chapter.
let's go to luck.
Luck.
All right.
Mm, Vishwagar, Siksha will take.
Yeah, I'll take, sir.
Yeah, go for it.
I think this is conversation between Sophie and mom.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
yeah. So I'll still continue Sophie, Siksha. You'll be mom.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Lock. As hare and empty as a blackboard before the teacher arrives. Sophie arrived home at 8:30. That was 1.5 hours after the agreement, which was not really an agreement. She had simply skipped dinner and left a message for her mother that she would be back not later than 7.
this has got to stop, Sophie. I had to call information and ask if they had any record of anyone named Alberto in the old town. They laughed at me.
I couldn't get away. I think we are just about to make a breakthrough in a huge mystery.
Nonsense.
It's true.
Did you invite him to your party?
Oh no, I forgot.
Well, now I insist on meeting him. Tomorrow at the latest. It's not natural for a young girl to be meeting an older man like this.
You have got no reason to be scared of Alberto. It may be worse with Hilda's father.
Who's Hilda?
The daughter of the man in Lebanon. He's really bad. He may be controlling the whole world.
If you don't immediately introduce me to your Alberto, I won't allow you to see him again. I won't feel easy about him until until I at least know what he looks like.
Sophie had a brilliant idea and dashed up to her room.
What's what's the matter with you now? Her mother called after her.
In a flash, Sophie was back again. In a minute, you'll see what he looks like. And then I hope you'll let me be. She waved the video cassette and went over to the VCR.
Did he give you a video?
From Athens. Okay. Pictures of Acropolis soon appeared on the screen. Her mother sat dumbfounded as Alberto came forward and began to speak directly to Sophie. Sophie now noticed something she had forgotten about. The Acropolis was crowded with tourists. milling about in their respective groups. A small placard was being held up from the middle of one group. On it was written Hilda. Alberto continued his wandering on the Acropolis. After a while, he went down through the entrance and climbed to the Areopagus hill where Paul had addressed the Athenians. Then he went on to talk to Sophie from the square. Her mother sat commenting on the video in short utterances.
Incredible. Is that Alberto? He mentioned the rabbit again. But yes, he's really talking to you, Sophie. I didn't know Paul went to Athens.
The video was coming to the part where ancient Athens suddenly rises from the ruins. At the last minute, Sophie managed to stop the tape. Now that she had shown her mother Alberto, there was no need to introduce her to Plato as well. There was silence in the room. What do you think of him? He's quite good looking, isn't he? Teased Sophie.
What a strange man he must be, having himself filmed in Athens just so he could send it to a girl he hardly knows. When was he in Athens?
I haven't a clue.
But there's something else.
What?
He looks very much like the major who lived in that little hut in the woods.
Well, maybe it is him, Mom.
But nobody has seen him for over 15 years.
He probably moved around a lot. To Athens, maybe?
Her mother shook her head. When I saw him sometime in the 70s, he wasn't a day younger than this Alberto I just saw. He had a foreign sounding name.
Knox?
Could be, Sophie. Could be his name was Knox.
Or was it Nag?
I can't for the life of me remember which Knox or Nag or which Knox or Nag are you talking about?
One is Alberto, the other is Hilda's father.
It's all making me dizzy.
Is there any food in the house?
We can warm up the meatballs.
Exactly 2 weeks went by without Sophie hearing a word from Alberto. She got another birthday card for Hilda, but although the actual day was approaching, she did not receive a single birthday card herself. One afternoon, she went to the old town and knocked on Alberto's door. He was out, but there was a short note attached to his door. It said, Happy birthday, Hilda. Now the great turning point is at hand. The moment of truth, little one. Every time I think about it, I cannot stop laughing. It has naturally something to do with Berkeley, so hold on to your hat. Sophie tore the note off the door and stuffed it into Alberto's mailbox as she went out. Damn, surely he had not gone back to Athens. How could he leave her with so many questions unanswered? When she got home from school on June 14th, Hermes was romping about in the garden. Sophie ran toward him and he came prancing happily toward her. She put her arms around him as if he were the one who could solve all the riddles. Again, she left a note for her mother, but this time she put Alberto's address on it. As they made their way across town, Sophie thought about tomorrow. Not about her own birthday so much. That was not going to be celebrated until Midsummer Eve anyway. But tomorrow was Hilda's birthday too. Sophie was convinced something quite extraordinary would happen. At least there would be an end to all those birthday cards from Lebanon. When they had crossed Main Square and were making for the old town, they passed by a park with a playground. Hermes stopped by a bench as if he wanted Sophie to sit down. She did, and while she patted the dog's head, she looked into his eyes. Suddenly, the dog started to shudder violently. He's going to bark now, thought Sophie. Then his jaws began to vibrate, but Hermes neither growled nor barked. He opened his mouth and said, Happy birthday, Hilda. Sophie was speechless. Did the dog just talk to her? Impossible. She must have imagined it because she was thinking of Hilda. But deep down, she was nevertheless convinced that Hermes had spoken, and in a deep, resonant bass voice. The next second, everything was as before. Hermes gave a couple of demonstrative barks, as if to cover up the fact that he had just spoken with a human voice, and trotted on ahead toward Alberto's place. As they were going inside, Sophie looked up at the sky. It had been fine weather all day, but now heavy clouds were beginning to gather in the distance. Alberto opened the door, and Sophie said at once, "No civilities, please. You're a great idiot, and you know it."
What's the matter now?
The major taught Hermes to talk.
Ah, so it has come to that.
Yes, imagine.
And what did he say?
I'll give you three guesses.
I imagine he said something along the lines of Happy birthday,
Bingo! Alberto let
Alberto.
Sophie in. He was dressed in yet another costume. It wasn't all that different from last time, but today there were hardly any braidings, bows, or lace. But that's not all, Sophie said.
What do you mean?
Didn't you find the note in the mailbox?
Oh, that. I threw it away at once.
I don't care if he laughs every time he thinks of Berkeley. But what is so funny about that particular philosopher?
We'll have to wait and see.
But today is the day you're going to talk about him, isn't it?
Yes, today is the day.
Alberto made himself comfortable on the sofa. Then he said,
Last time we sat here, I told you about Descartes and Spinoza. We agreed that they had one important thing in common, namely, that they were both rationalists.
and a rationalist is someone who believes strongly in the importance of reason.
That's right. A rationalist believes in reason as the primary source of knowledge, and he may also believe that man has certain innate ideas that exist in the mind prior to all experience. And the clearer such ideas may be, the more certain it is that they correspond to reality. You recall how Descartes had a clear and distinct idea of a perfect entity, on the basis of which he concluded that God exists.
I'm not especially forgetful.
Rationalist thinking of rationalist thinking of this kind was typical for philosophy of the 17th century. It was also firmly rooted in the Middle Ages, and we remember it from Plato and Socrates too. But in the 18th century, it was the object of an ever increasing in depth criticism. A number of philosophers held that we have absolutely nothing in the mind that we have not experienced through the senses. A view such as this is called empiricism.
And you're going to talk about them today. These empiricists.
I'm going to attempt to. Yes, the most important empiricists or philosophers of experience were Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, and all three were British. The leading rationalists in the 17th century were Descartes, who was French, Spinoza, who was Dutch, and Leibniz, who was German. So we usually make a distinction between British empiricism and continental rationalism.
What a lot of difficult words. Could you repeat the meaning of empiricism?
An empiricist, an empiricist will derive all knowledge of the world from what the senses tell us. The classic formulation of an empirical approach came from Aristotle. He said, there is nothing in the mind except what was first in the senses. This view implied a pointed criticism of Plato, who had held that man brought with him a set of innate ideas from the world of ideas. Locke repeats Aristotle's words, and when Locke uses them, they are aimed at Descartes.
There is nothing in the mind? Except what was first in the senses?
We have no innate ideas or conceptions about the world we are brought into before we have seen it. If we do have a conception or an idea that cannot be related to experienced facts, then it will be a false conception. When we, for instance, use words like God, eternity, or substance, reason is being misused because nobody has experienced God, eternity, or what philosophers have called substance. So, therefore, many learned dissertations could be written which in actual fact contain no really new conceptions. An ingeniously contrived philosophical system such as this may seem impressive, but it is pure fantasy. 17th and 18th century philosophers had inherited a number of such learned dissertations. Now they had to be examined under a microscope. They had to be purified of all hollow notions. We might compare it with panning for gold. Most of what you fish up is sand and clay, but in between you see the glint of a particle of gold,
And that particle of gold is real experience?
or at least thoughts that can be related to experience. It became a matter of great importance to the British empiricists to scrutinize all human conceptions to see whether there was any basis for them in actual experience. But let us take one philosopher at a time.
Okay, shoot.
The first was the Englishman John Locke, who lived from 1632 to 1704. His main work was the Essay Concerning Human Understanding, published in 1690. In it, he tried to clarify two questions. First, where we get our ideas from, and secondly, whether we can rely on what our senses tell us.
That was some project.
We'll take these questions one at a time. Locke's claim is that all our thoughts and ideas issue from that which we have taken in through the senses. Before we perceive anything, the mind is a tabula rasa, or an empty slate.
You can skip the Latin.
Before we can sense anything, then the mind is as bare and empty as a blackboard before the teacher arrives in the classroom. Locke also compared the mind to an unfurnished room. But then we begin to sense things. We see the world around us. We smell, taste, hear, feel, and hear. And nobody does this more intensely than infants. In this way, what Locke called simple ideas of sense arise. But the mind does not just passively receive information from outside it. Some activity happens in the mind as well. The single sense ideas are worked on by thinking, reasoning, believing, and doubting, thus giving rise to what he calls reflection. So, he distinguished between sensation and reflection. The mind is not merely a passive receiver. It classifies and processes all sensations as they come streaming in. And this is just where one must be on guard.
On guard?
Locke emphasized that the only things we can perceive are simple sensations. When I eat an apple, for example, I do not sense the whole apple in one single sensation. In actual fact, I receive a whole series of simple sensations, such as that something is green, smells fresh, and tastes juicy and sharp only after I have eaten an apple many times do I think, now I am eating an apple. As Locke would say, we have formed a complex idea of an apple. When we were infants, tasting an apple for the first time, we had no such complex idea. But we saw something green. We tasted something fresh and juicy, yummy. It was a bit sour too. Little by little, we bundle many similar sensations together and form concepts like apple, pear, orange. But in the final analysis, all the material for our knowledge of the world comes to us through sensations. Knowledge that cannot be traced back to a simple sensation is therefore false knowledge and must consequently be rejected.
At any rate, we can be sure that what we see, hear, smell, and taste are the way we sense it.
Both yes and no. And that brings us to the second question Locke tried to answer. He had first answered the question of where we get our ideas from. Now, he asked whether the world really is the way we perceive it. This is not so obvious. You see, Sophie, we must not jump to conclusions. This is the only thing a real philosopher must never do.
I did not say a word.
Locke distinguished between what he called primary and secondary qualities, and in this he acknowledged his debt to the great philosophers before him, including Descartes. By primary qualities, he meant extension, weight, motion, and number, and so on. When it is a question of qualities such as these, we can be certain that the senses reproduce them objectively. But we also sense other qualities in things. We say that something is sweet or sour, green or red, hot or cold. Locke calls these secondary qualities. Locke calls these secondary qualities. Sensations like these, color, smell, taste, sound, do not reproduce the real qualities that are inherent in the things themselves. They reproduce only the effect of the outer reality on our senses.
Everyone to his own taste, in other words.
Exactly. Everyone can agree on the primary qualities like size and weight because they lie within the objects themselves. But the secondary qualities like color and taste can vary with from person to person and from animal to animal depending on the nature of the individual's sensations.
When Joanna eats an orange, she gets a look on her face like when other people eat a lemon. She can't take more than one segment at a time. She says it tastes sour. I usually think the same orange is nice and sweet.
And neither one of you is right or wrong. You are just describing how the orange affects your senses. It's the same with the sense of color. Maybe you don't like a certain shade of red. But if Joanna buys a dress in that color, it might be wise to keep your opinion to yourself. You experience the color differently, but it is neither pretty nor ugly.
But everyone can agree that an orange is round.
Yes, if you have a round orange, you can't think it is square. You can think it is sweet or sour, but you can't think it weighs 8 kilos if it only weighs 200 grams. You can certainly believe it weighs several kilos, but then you'd be way off the mark. If several people have to guess how much something weighs, there will always be one of them who is more right than others. Excuse me, sir.
The same applies
Hello?
to number. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think Shiksha had to step out.
Yeah, he had to take a call in Kunta. 152
Okay,
page
okay. No problem. So let's see.
986
Yeah,
piece.
I'm
So
back, sir. I'm back.
Oh, you're back? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. Right,
So,
sir.
yeah. So I'll repeat from I lost. So I'll repeat it, sir. So yes, if you have a round orange, you can't think it is square. You can think it is sweet or sour, but you can't think it weighs 8 kilos if it only weighs 200 grams. You can certainly believe it weighs several kilos, but then you'd be way off the mark. If several people have to guess how much something weighs, there will always be one of them who is more right than the others. The same applies to number. Either there are 986 peas in the can or there are not. The same with motion. Either the car is moving or it's stationary.
I get it.
So, when it was a question of extended reality, Locke agreed with Descartes that it does have certain qualities that man is able to understand with his reason.
It shouldn't be so difficult to agree on that.
Locke admitted what he called intuitive or demonstrative knowledge in other areas too. For instance, he held that certain ethical principles applied to everyone. In other words, he believed in the idea of a natural right, and that was a rationalistic feature of his thought. An equally rationalistic feature was that Locke believed that it was inherent in human reason to be able to know that God exists.
Maybe he was right.
About what?
That God exists?
It is possible, of course, but he did not let it rest on faith. He believed that the idea of God was born of human reason. That was a rationalistic feature. I should add that he spoke out for intellectual liberty and tolerance. He was also preoccupied with equality of the sexes, maintaining that the subjugation of women to men was man-made. Therefore, it could be altered.
I cannot disagree there.
Locke was one of the first philosophers in more recent times to be interested in sexual roles. He had a great influence on John Stuart Mill, who in turn had a key role in the struggle for equality of the sexes. All in all, Locke was a forerunner of many liberal ideas which later, during the period of the French Enlightenment in the 18th century, came into full flower. It was he who first advocated the principle of division of powers.
Isn't that when the power of the state is divided between different institutions?
Do you remember which institutions?
There is the legislative power or elected representatives. There is the judicial power or law courts. And then there is the executive power, that's the government.
This division of power originated from the French Enlightenment philosopher Montesquieu. Locke had first and foremost emphasized that the legislative and the executive power must be separated if tyranny was to be avoided. He lived at the time of Louis XIV, who had assembled all power in his own hands. I am the state, he said. We say he was an absolute ruler. Nowadays, we would call Louis XIV's rule lawless and arbitrary. Locke's view was that to ensure a legal state, the people's representatives must take the laws and the king or the government must apply them.
Mm.
All right.
With that ends Locke.
Yep. So with that ends. So we are slowly seeing the emergence of some of the newer rules and ideas, and enter the British
Yes, sir.
half-baked ideas, basically, that are not based on really anything. It's just pure
Mm,
empirical. Whatever they want, they classify as empirical, which means experience through the senses. And whatever is not, if it is not in your experience or if it's not empirical to you, you just classify it as not empirical, right? So that's
right, sir.
that's a huge break from the ancient as well as the Renaissance and Baroque thoughts, right? And with the
Mm,
advent of the British philosophers, everything takes a turn for the worse, I think, basically. You know,
right,
because
sir.
now we are going from there's no medieval connection to the British, you know,
Mm,
uh, but the rest of the folks had some connection at least, right? But this was pure uh, their senses and thought processes randomly just being glorified, you know.
mm,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So anyway, I mean that's that. And one of the things that I'd like to point out is we have decisively completed half of the book, and we have made the turn, you know.
Oh, wonderful,
So
sir.
3 or 4 pages, now we are at 153. I don't think it goes down to the last page. So we are more or less done with half of the book. So from here onwards, it's a countdown. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And more importantly, I don't think there should be much discussion about these things, because now you'll see that some of these ideas are very sort of a lot of discussion in the more, not the continental Eurasia, as in like Europe plus Asia. From the Middle East, things are shifting westwards, basically, right? And you get a lot more materialism, a lot more. So in this day and age, slowly these so-called empiricists are being handed their hat, because previously it was all about it should all be senses, right? Now we have methods of measurement, and they are not really revealing the answer, because if everything is based on sensory and empiricism, then you should be able to make a perfect map of the mind, right? And recently I was watching this one video by this fellow. I'll put it in the chat, that link. You can listen to him. And he's actually a psychologist or cognitive psychologist, or one of those new age professions that sit between physics and uh, neuroscience and human psychology and thought processes and all that, right? And then his statement is, we don't know anything, you know. So it's quite fascinating, because he makes the same arguments that we have always been making, which is, if the mind map is deterministic, then you should be able to map out exactly the brain impulse to what you feel, you know.
Mm,
So,
correct, sir.
but that doesn't happen. So you cannot stimulate the brain in such a way that you can actually recreate an experience. It doesn't work like that, you know.
Exactly, sir.
Uh, there are some brain areas that get lighted up when you have a certain experience. That has been observed, right? But that doesn't really. Uh, so this fellow's name is Donald Hoffman. Okay, put this guy's thing in the link. Again, you know, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because he probably has got some ideas of his own, and you know, he makes a lot of jumps. So I don't find him to be quite convincing. But he speaks in the language that these Western philosophers understand. So that's good enough for us. And the worst thing that he does is he takes some Indian ideas and doesn't attribute them to India, which is what all these Westerners do as well, basically. Right? That said, it's okay. Once the idea is planted, you can always relabel it. It's no big. It's like yoga, for example. Right? It's an Indian idea. It's very popular in the West, but nobody sort of traces it back to India. Doesn't matter, right? As long as the idea spreads and people start gaining out of it, peace of mind, calmness, stillness, those kinds of things, eventually they'll benefit, and that's what matters. All right, sir. So, any other thoughts, comments? I'm going to keep quiet and we'll try to move towards the finish.
I had one thought about Locke when he says about equality. Is that gross equality or?
See, look, you have to understand where they're coming from, right? So, for a very long time, especially this post-Abrahamic influence, there is an inherent inequality built into that system,
Yes, sir.
which didn't exist even in the Hellenistic period and all those eras. So it is quite, and then we are now talking about post Martin Luther as well, basically, right? So depending on
Sir,
I mean, he was living in UK, right? So not sure how serious the inequality was, because women were not allowed to vote for a long time. All these things are there, right? And when you try
right,
to
sir.
balance the philosophical with the societal, there is going to be this kind of a mixture that you will see, basically. Even today,
Right, sir.
some of the leftist rationalists, we see that kind of crowd. When they discuss the philosophy, they tend to mix society with it. See what I'm saying? They sort of tend to keep shifting the hats. They'll say, well, the constitution says this, well, the society is this way. And then they jump straight back to philosophy, saying, but then, so that's the sort of situation.
Right, sir. Jumping jacks.
Exactly. It's not jumping jacks. That's how they learn these things, the ideas. The ideas are presented in a socio-political, philosophical mix, basically. Because, see, think about it this way. There is an argument to be made there, which is if it is not relevant for the greater society, why are you discussing it, right? So they don't want to free completely the thought process from the happenings of the greater society that they are part of, right? And when there are like serious inequalities, then obviously you have to sort of bring them into these discourses. Because look, if philosophy gets a lot of airtime, for example, as in like a lot of people are paying attention to philosophy, then you would naturally, the politicians or the political discourse would think of you as a natural ally to incorporate their ideas into it so that it gets spread through a larger population. So that's how politics is, right? Politics always looks for the vehicle that gives it the maximum visibility and impact. If it is
Right,
capital, they'll go after them, basically. If it is intellectual discourse like philosophy, they'll go attach themselves to that.
Right, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, when I was addressing my question, I was exactly talking about these ideas emerging in the Europe, right, sir? So
Yeah.
only in that part of the world, all these ideas were emerging. When when people say, for example, a heliocentric theory emerged in geocentric theory, right? So when people say a geocentric theory that was existing in only that part of the world, not in the entire world, right, sir?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Because you won't find
Because
that documentation in this particular book, or at least in the Western philosophy. Right? They were battling their own. See, basically, the geocentric theory was it is one of the pillars of the Abrahamic construct.
right, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So in extension, we can say in the Europe and in the Middle East, in that parts of the world, not in the continents of North and South Americas or the eastern part of the world, right, sir?
possibly, again, lack of evidence doesn't mean they didn't exist here either. Right? So you can only conclude
Because
that they did exist there, and that's all you can say.
yeah, they did exist only there.
No, you can't say only. They did exist
Only.
there.
Oh, okay, okay. Mm. Okay, okay, sir.
Yeah. All right. SK garu, Vamsi garu, Lawyer garu. Quick round. Any questions, comments?
Because sir, because there was not much communication back then as much as it is now, right, sir?
True. So the thing is this, right? You need to look at
Mm.
the equivalent historicity of some of these other places, either to
Mm.
find other philosophies, or if there is nothing, then you cannot make any concluding statements.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because why I'm saying is why I'm saying this is because many cultures have been destroyed by the Abrahamic faiths in the Crusades and all. So it is very difficult to say that the the ideas of Europe existed everywhere. I
No,
mean,
it's not
what
difficult.
people
You cannot
thought,
say it. You cannot
yeah,
say it. Neither can you say they existed, nor they did. You cannot say they did not exist. So to say
yeah,
that they
because
existed will be false.
mm,
Yeah.
okay,
See, there are two zones. One is they existed, then they did not
mm,
exist. Then there is an in between, right? So you
mm,
cannot be the in between when there is no evidence. You cannot put it in this bucket or that bucket.
mm,
Yeah. So you just say
that's it.
maybe keep digging.
Yeah, because sir, every by how can I say, as we keep uh, inquiring about our previous cultures and all those things, I think that we might find evidence that all they believed were much different from what it was in Europe or the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a given. You'll find
Yeah,
more. The only thing is, what is it?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question, sir. Right.
Yeah. You just have to keep finding new evidence. That's all.
Mm. Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else? Okay.
Yeah, SK Garu.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good, sir.
I'm also good.
Okay. So I think for today we'll close the session. Thanks to all the participants. Thanks for reading Thanks for the panelists, Vamsi Garu, Sikshardhan Garu, SK Garu, Lawyer Garu, and whoever is going to watch in the future. Please comment if you have any questions. Otherwise, like and subscribe the channel. Thank you.